How can we as content marketers work smarter instead of harder? How can we save time creating content? Maybe you've often wondered, what if I could create one video and use that for live streaming, use that for YouTube video, podcast, and maybe even a blog post? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about in today's episode. Let's get started. Hey messengers, welcome to the Market Your Message Show. I'm your host, Jonathan Milligan, and author of the book, Your Message Matters, How to Rise Above the Noise and Get Paid for What You Know. And in this episode, I want to cover the idea of working smarter instead of harder. Listen, you're busy. You've got a lot on your plate, whether you're doing this thing full-time online or you're working on the side, like a side hustle. How can we create one valuable piece of content and repurpose that video into many different modalities? That's what we're going to be talking about. But before we do, I want to make sure that you know about a special offer we have. My latest book, Your Message Matters, of course, is available in a bookstore near you, but you can actually get a free copy. Yes, we will send you a free physical copy in the mail. All we ask is that you cover the shipping and handling. Just go to yourmessagemattersbook.com. Again, it's yourmessagemattersbook.com. And we'll send you this 267-page book that basically breaks down how I run an online business through writing, speaking, and coaching. And yeah, I hope it is a help to you. All right, let's get into our episode today. And specifically, the reason why I want to cover this is recently I did a private workshop as a bonus for one of our programs. And it was the first time I actually fully dove in and taught my Content Multiplier workshop. So just to give you a little bit of backdrop, what I do is I will typically record several episodes of my show, the Market Your Message show, ahead of time. So I will batch create them, and then I will premiere an episode in my live stream. Now, my live stream show happens every Wednesday, 1 o'clock Eastern, inside of my private Facebook group. It's a community that I build. It's something I offer where I show up live. Then I hit basically play on the video. They get to watch the recording of that show, and they get first access to it. And then they stick around afterwards and they get to listen to Q&A and interact with me. So it's a special thing that we do. By the way, if you want to join our group, it's jmill. So that's just a shortening of my name, the letter J, mill, mill.biz/group. We've got over 4,200 bloggers, speakers, and coaches in that group. And you could come watch this show live every single week and get first access to it. If you've been listening on the podcast or watching on YouTube, you can come join us and actually participate live with us. So once that happens, then next I take the small recording of the show that I did ahead of time, and that also becomes a podcast episode, a YouTube video, and a future blog post. So even though I went 2 hours into the training of this private workshop, I thought I would just kind of cover the big pieces for you on this show so you know exactly how we do this. So there are 5 phases to this process, and I think this will give you a good overview of how we do this. Now, candid, I created a checklist that I follow, and I have a team that helps me with this. So here's one of the beautiful things I want to start off with. Eventually, you don't want to be doing everything. You don't want to be the Pied Piper in your business. So for me, I've been able to narrow it down to where I just come up with the idea. I record a 15 to 20 minute video, and then the rest, my team helps me to do. Right down to creating the podcast, scheduling it, doing the SEO on YouTube, taking the transcript, turning it into a blog post, the SEO on the blog post, all of it. So I'm going to walk you through the 5 phases right now. Phase number 1 is what I call the record the show workflow. And specifically, there's 5 things I do here. I choose a topic that I want to cover. By the way, I like to batch create this. So typically I will choose 12 or 13 topics at once and come up with these 12 or 13 topics to cover. Usually they're around problems my audience is facing, so I can create something of value. And then I will batch create these. I'll take an entire Tuesday and I will record as many videos as I can. Again, I like to keep my shows somewhere around the 10 to 20 minute mark. And so I'm able to record several of those in one day. I like to find what's considered a green SEO keyword using TubeBuddy. So that is something that I do before I really get into what the actual headline or the topic is I like to find a green keyword. I record the show again, I batch create it. I like to then add it to Descript. Descript is a software that is a super easy video editing software that basically when you add your video to Descript, it transcribes it, and then I'm able to hit one button and remove all the filler words. Words like and which actually they may not even show up on the finalized video of this because I just said them. So if you just didn't hear them, that's because they got removed from Descript. And then I upload it to Google Drive so that my team gets access to it. All right, phase 2. After I record the show, then it's time for the live stream workflow. So like I said, every Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern in my private Facebook group, I go live and I say, welcome everybody to the show, interact with the people that are watching live. And then I say, let's get into today's show. And then literally I hit play. I use Ecamm Live and it just seamlessly plays the recorded episode that I recorded days or weeks earlier. But the important thing is the live stream is the first access to the content. I've yet to publish that on the blog, on the podcast, or on YouTube videos. So that is what I do. Now, getting into some specifics here, I add the recorded video to Ecamm Live. I create the live stream featured image so that I can schedule the live stream in the Facebook group. I schedule the live stream, and then I schedule an email that actually goes to my list 10 minutes before the show goes live. Now, why do I email my list? Because I want to get them in my Facebook group. And every single week we get new members in my private Facebook group. It's just one more connection point with them. So that is how the live stream workflow runs. Now, phase 3 is now the YouTube workflow. So once the live stream is over, obviously we're not publishing the entire live stream. It's just the recorded part of the show. And I've already uploaded that to Google Drive for my team. So here's just 4 things that we do from there. Somebody on my team downloads the video from Google Drive. They then upload it to YouTube as an unlisted draft. They create a YouTube thumbnail to go with the video. And then they optimize the video using TubeBuddy is an SEO tool that we use to do our best to make it SEO or search engine optimized as best we can. And then we schedule that. And typically we have one new video every week that goes out. So that is how we take the original shortened version of the recorded video that I did way before the live stream, and we take that video and optimize it for YouTube, put it up on YouTube. Then that leads us to phase number 4, which is the podcast workflow. Now, this is actually very simple. And the reason why it's so simple is because I use a podcast hosting software called Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout makes it simple. You can actually upload any type of recording to Buzzsprout. So yes, I can upload a video and Buzzsprout will convert it to an MP3 format so that it's audio only. So that's really awesome because we don't have to do any extra exporting of our content. We can just upload the video. And while the video is uploading, we then add in the title, we add in the show notes, and it's pretty simple. From there, we just upload the podcast, we create the show notes, and we schedule that podcast. So now the same content is on the podcast. Now, this is really important. In order to really pull this off, you have to always be thinking about in your videos to make sure it makes sense for somebody who's listening on the podcast. So I've caught myself a few times scribbling out on my iPad and doing information or showing screens, and that's okay, but you got to make sure you reference that in the podcast. So one way to do that is to say, by the way, if you're listening to the podcast, there's a link in the show notes to hop over to the YouTube channel and actually watch the video of this one if you want to see what I'm talking about. But I'll do my best to describe it to you. So that's super important that you remember that, because we don't want the listeners on the podcast to become frustrated, right? All right, and then finally, phase 5 is we move this into the blog post workflow. Now, there's 4 essential steps that I like to use. So there's lots of keyword research tools out there. I'm currently really loving WriterZen. WriterZen, we'll put a link below the video or in the show notes. But what we do is we take the transcript that, by the way, we got from Descript, and we put it into WriterZen. And then we SEO optimize the content using WriterZen. Now, I could go a whole 30 minutes on showing you how to do that process, but WriterZen is going to give us the ideal keywords we should include. It's going to give us ideas for making the content better, and we'll add an image to that blog post. I like to add a content upgrade, which is just a way to give someone who's reading the blog post an opportunity to join your email list. I will also embed the video from YouTube and embed the podcast into the post. Now, why would I do that for a blog post? Here's why. One of the primary ranking factors on Google is time spent on a page. So if you want that blog post to rank, add a video that is the same content but in video form, or add a podcast where someone can just hit the podcast, listen to it. And if they're watching the video and they're listening to the podcast, they're going to spend a lot longer on your page or your blog post than if they were just to read it. So that is just an extra step, but I think it works well for us. So just as a final wrap up, let me recap this, and then let me tell you how we stay organized with this. Phase 1 is to record the show workflow. So I actually just record the show, the 15-20 minute segment. Then I premiere it on Livestream by showing up live and then playing the recorded video and then hanging out live afterwards to answer questions. Then the recorded portion of the show that we did ahead of time gets optimized and published on YouTube. Then it gets put over onto the podcast. And then finally, it gets transcribed and turned into a blog post. So if you think about it, I'm able to record one video and make it a live stream, a YouTube video, a podcast, and a blog post. 4 different ways to reach my audience. So what do you think? Was this helpful? Do you kind of have a better idea? And by the way, as far as application, the way that we stay organized with this is I use Asana. And we have over 27 subtasks that literally keep us organized. So I have teammates that do certain parts of the process, and it just is an easy way. We just duplicate that task so that we can keep all those 27 odd subtasks. We don't have to remember them from memory, right? We don't have to remember them because we just duplicate the original task. It's got all the 27 subtasks there. All right. Did you enjoy this episode? Was this helpful to you? Let me know. And also, what would you like for me to cover in future episodes? Take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or even review our show. And by the way, if you haven't yet grabbed a copy of my latest book that helps you learn the 4-step process to take a message and turn it into a platform, go to yourmessagemattersbook.com and I'll send you a free copy to your house. Again, yourmessagemattersbook.com. All right, well, that's it for this edition of the show. Thanks again for being here, and never forget, your message matters.